Hello everyone, welcome to my podcast, Death and the Design Model. I have another guest speaker joining me today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Lindsay Dunlevy and I am a teacher of the deaf.
I thought we can chat more about what Lindsay's done and our job as a teacher of the deaf and what made her decide to become a teacher of the deaf. Would you like to explain?
Absolutely. I trained as a primary teacher. So by trade, I was a primary teacher for just under a decade. I had my wee girl, went off on maternity leave, and when I came back, you know that way you get itchy feet and you're like, I want to do something different. I needed either a challenge or something to reignite that passion. I think I lost my enthusiasm a little bit after having my wee girl. So in all honesty, I wasn't necessarily looking to be a teacher of the deaf. It almost just happened. There was a job locally came up, and even though it was in a secondary school, my old secondary school, they were saying, we take primary teachers because you're a kind of jack of all trades. You have an element of like all the subjects. So went for the interview, got it. And the only thing I remember thinking at the time was, I don't know if I'll do a good enough job. Like, I don't know if I can give them the kind of the service that they need. I was really concerned that I had always been with primary kids. So I'd always worked with primary 1, primary 2 and primary 3. I had never went higher. So I was always in the infants. So when this job came up, went for the interview, got it and was like, oh, okay. Do I take it? And I was so excited, I think, for the challenge. But then there was that realisation of, that's a whole new job. It's a totally different, it isn't. There's parts of it that are very different. And you're working with teenagers. That's very different. But there's parts of it, just teaching in general, the skills are so transferable that I thought, no, I can do this. And part of taking the job, I had to agree to do a postgrad. So I had to agree to another degree, basically, to be a qualified teacher of the deaf. So I am not officially qualified yet. I think I've got another, the way it works out, another year and a half or so. But yeah, it's another degree on top of my teaching degree that I already have.
So if there were teachers out there, them situations in your primary school or in a high school, but they're not teachers of the deaf, and if they do want to become a teacher of the deaf, where can they find, like what college, where do they go?
So there are
I did a bit of research and I thought it was very hard to find. It made me think, I'm worried about the shortage because it's so hard to find. So would you be able to explain that? How do you find the courses, training?
I think if you were to search Teacher of the Deaf training, I think, I may be wrong, someone can correct me, there's only 2 places in the UK that I know of. One of them is Edinburgh, so the University of Edinburgh.
You're right, I've did that as well.
And the second place I think is Birmingham. So I know that some teachers of the deaf in Scotland choose to go through Birmingham University. And
do they remote or do they got to go to university?
Both. I think, and that's pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, it was some of the work was in uni and some of it was online.
Right.
A bit like Open University where you're doing some of it yourself and some of it you're going down to Birmingham. But myself and some of my colleagues, we are going through the University of Edinburgh.
Fantastic. So Edinburgh is the only one in Scotland?
Yes.
So we've got that many universities, like St Andrews, Glasgow, Strathclyde, and none of them offer teacher of the deaf. So I don't know much about teachers. If someone do want to become a teacher, where do they go to learn?
So for teacher
when you primary teacher, what college did you go to?
So I was Strathclyde.
So there's lots of courses.
there's more...
For primary and secondary?
Yeah, there's more options, I would say, with primary and secondary. You've got your Glasgow, your Strathclyde, West of Scotland, I think, have a course as well that I know people have been on. But I think with being a teacher of the deaf, it's so specialised. And obviously then you're looking for the staff to do the training, so the lecturers and the sort of the tutors that come out to obviously observe you teaching. So the tutors need to come out and visit us doing placements and to see us teaching pupils of the deaf pupils, I should say. So it's so specialised. I think that's why it's not offered.
So, and the teacher courses when you were at university, didn't mention at all about having children like with autism or being there at the end of that, or is it just all about training to be a teacher?
So part of your general teaching degree, so whether you're primary or secondary, it looks at what the kind of the umbrella term of additional support needs. So you're looking at pupils who perhaps need more support or a different pathway. So that is part of it where, as you've mentioned, you'll maybe touch on ASD pupils, so pupils on the autistic spectrum, anyone that's sort of neurodivergent, so someone that's got a slightly different brain, whether it's ADHD or ADD, so there's other ones. I don't really remember, if I'm being honest, I don't really remember visual or hearing impairment being spoken about. And I think the assumption is they'll be catered for by someone else. They'll be looked after by a specialist. They'll have an expert and they're not going to be my priority, almost not priority, but someone else will help me.
Because I'm worried about that actually. A lot of deaf children are now going mainstream. There are not very many deaf children. Most of them are closed down. Those children now who are going to primary, high school have to go into mainstream. But my teachers are not teachers every day. So if they're not mentioning that and the teachers like Jack Uni and all that's pretty hard because somebody went to a school somewhere and it got no deaf unit, no support, and the teacher have a deaf child. To me, that's wrong. They should have a bit of support in there just in case you do have a deaf child and you're more aware. I'm not talking about full-on training, it's more like a deaf awareness training. Add more of that.
Yeah, and I think that's what most schools do, really, that then there is that deaf awareness training when there's a deaf child. I think that the support is given to teachers when they've got a deaf pupil, so it's almost like there's so much to be taught at the teacher training level to become a teacher that to throw in lots of complicated other avenues, that it would get maybe just too much. So almost is when you have a pupil that has that need, then you seek the training, then you are offered the support, and it would be either an outreach teacher, like we call them peripatetic teachers. I'd never heard.
I cannot even do that one. I'm not doing that one. As a deaf person, that one, it won't come out of my mouth. So if I want to do that one, I'll get Handy to speak for me. I just can't.
So we call them peri teachers. I had never heard of that before being a teacher of the deaf. So a peripatetic teacher, try spelling that, is basically a teacher who goes out from one unit and goes out to lots of different schools. So I suppose if a teacher does have a deaf pupil in their class, they are getting support and they will be given that deaf awareness training. But as you say, it's only when the pupil is in their class, and almost like, is that too late? Is that too little?
But they can teach you that year.
Yeah.
So that person won't be teaching that child for 7 primary years, so that's what worries me. So, yeah.
And I think I know you're saying that most pupils these days go into mainstream, which they do. There's that assumption of mainstreaming now, which I am currently writing an essay on. And even just looking at the pros and cons, there are a lot of pros for mainstreaming. However, we are very aware of the difficulties, and it's the obstacles, I think, of making just the curriculum and the school in general accessible, just making it accessible for all children. So I know that, Cheryl, you're coming at it from a deaf perspective, but think of all the other kids who maybe have that neurodivergence of autism, ADHD, a visual impairment, even just to wear glasses, making sure that resources and the teaching methods, everything are accessible
That's
to
what
all.
I was thinking, putting that on top of it, do it all the way. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I find that so important.
It is, it's a hard one to juggle, and I think loads of teachers out there, any teacher listening to this has been in that predicament of you're trying to teach, say, maybe a class of 33, and you have possibly, well, you do have 33 individuals who all learn differently, who all have different needs, whether it's a recognised, diagnosed additional need, or whether they've just had a bereavement in the family, or they've just moved house. There's so many things that as a teacher you're juggling to make sure everyone's needs are met. And it now sounds massive saying all that out loud, but that's the job of a teacher. That's the enormity, I think, that sometimes I do feel, where you go, I need to make sure that you're all fulfilling your potential and you're all getting something out of this. It's massive, it is. It's a very enormous topic to cover in one session.
Yeah. No, yeah, because my son, he done primary, and because he done a do with a teacher every day, and he'll get one every year, and they support from him at the meeting. Mm-hmm. But I'm lucky, I have that too. If I was far away and there wasn't any school, I would tell me as a parent how much support they would get. So that's why I wanted to talk more about this. So other parents can listen. Lots of knowledge and information. So when the child's ready to start too, because it's hard for them to make a decision. And
I think part of my studies and everything that I've looked into. So here's a statistic. 90% of deaf children come from hearing adults, come from hearing parents. So there's no knowledge of deaf awareness, deaf culture, deaf identity. So when you add that into the mix, the parents tend to rely quite heavily on the experts. Usually medical experts, so usually your audiologist, your health visitor from kind of early years. So you're relying on them telling you what's best for your child. You're relying on, well, I don't know what's best for a deaf individual. What should I do? So them telling you, the parents almost being told, well, this is the school they should go to. This would be better for them. And it's a trust thing. You have to trust that they know what they're talking about and that they will have the best interest of your child at heart. And again, throwing into the mix now cochlear implants, the choices of what aids to use, the choices of signing, speaking. It's a massive responsibility on a parent, and obviously
definitely
being a parent myself, where you think, it's just responsibility one after the other. There's always something to worry about. So I think now, and I don't know the half of it. I only teach deaf students, I still don't. I have a kind of a foot in the door. I don't know what it's like to live.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was telling you from my experience, from my mum, when I went to nursery. I actually went to nursery earlier. So I started when I was 3 at that time because they felt I need to catch up, you know what I mean, to fine. But before, I don't know if it's before or after that, but my mum had an expert come to the house and she said to her, you know I'm going to laugh at that, she said to her, I don't think your child is going to talk. I think you should go then. Dynamics. Well, my mom, she was devastated. She was like, but I don't have anybody deaf in the family. I don't have a lot of information. I just felt because a long time ago, the information about the culture, the community wasn't very much out there. No. So my mom said, I'm going to follow my heart. And she said, I'm going to teach her to talk. I'm going to teach her to get it done. So she knew to sing me song, that she would start on my knee, and she would look at me and I would copy her that, and we would do all that. And when I started to speak, to go, right, okay, let's keep doing it. And I got a lot of support from my grandpa as well. They've all kind of like, you know, and I had speech therapy. And now I'm doing a podcast.
I know.
No, I don't think Dara will ever talk. Well, I'm on a podcast talking. Yay! But over to the dynamic, did I learned to time. So I'm going to be honest. I was choosing a journey. And I followed my journey. And I felt I've done what I can. Yep. And I've met my husband who's deaf and he's dying. So I learned dying from him. So I was able to do both at that time. So if you mean, I am who I am. Yeah. So for the parents out there, just follow the instinct. If you want the child to learn to dine, that's up to you. If you want the child to talk, that's up to you. Don't be forced into making a decision. And you know one thing that reading I'm doing this podcast, I think it's time for the parent or even children listen to more the people who are there. Yep. The people who have experienced their life, like me at 34-year-old, going through school, college, career. I can brain and talk about my difficult, so you can picture what you want from your child, not listen to the expert, because the expert hadn't gone through what I went through.
I think remembering...
They just go by statistics.
Yes.
And I feel... I don't know, I could be wrong. The audiologists, all that, I don't see any deaf people working for them, and I'm quite hard to understand that. Why, you know, employing more deaf people in there, they can do more. It might be difficult to do audiology, but the other way. Yeah. And if a parent goes down and see a deaf person doing the job and then they have a chat, that would help so much, wouldn't it?
I think that's what I was going to say. The experts are coming from the research. So their decisions and their knowledge is coming from a research point of view. So they're not making things up. It's coming from research. However, as you mentioned, they don't have that experience. They don't have what it is like to be in a world that doesn't cater for them. So when I did my deaf studies unit, which I loved, our lecturer was a signer and she had 2 translators.
Wow.
Interpreters. So...
Oh, I should have corrected it there, but I'm...
No, it's interpreters. No, I realised I made a mistake. So she had 2 interpreters who were amazing. She was mind-blowingly brilliant. And I think as well, the kind of the chat and the work that we did for the deaf studies was around your deaf identity, your deaf community, your deaf awareness. And it was very eye-opening that there was someone from our school, we went to the same school, just to add that in there. There was someone from our school, so bearing in mind that's where I'm now back teaching, who after school now completely signs. She's not vocal at all. She signs fully. And she felt she hadn't been given the right options. She hadn't been given that choice and that sort of route into the deaf world. Because I don't know how you'll feel, but I think a lot of the deaf identity is, well, I've got hearing friends and I speak to them. Then I've also got my deaf partner, or I've got my deaf friends and some of them sign. And so you feel pulled. Like, who are you as a person? Am I deaf? Oh, well, you don't sign. But then I've got my hearing friends. Oh, but do they always fully know what I'm going through? It's so hard. And I think from a teacher of the deaf point of view, just seeing that in our young people and knowing that sometimes the difficulties they're having are partly to do with their deafness. It's coming from that struggle and that identity and where do I fit in the world and why is there not more for me? Why is there not more representation, as you say, of deaf professionals, deaf people working in those roles that support deaf people? Where are they? And again, the full circle is a catch-22 of our education doesn't always support the deaf individual. So how do they go into further education to become qualified to work in that medical profession or to work in education and be the deaf role model that the deaf pupils need? It's so hard because it's a cycle, isn't it? It's finding accessible ways to allow deaf people into those roles, into those jobs.
Right, I've got a question.
Go for it.
You've explained that very well. And then
I hope so.
I'm going to, because I can't remember how many years ago, but I was do, but I'm 34, so how many years ago was that?
17, 18. Oh, we're so old, Cheryl. Wow. Yes. A long time.
Well, when I was do, that really annoyed me. How many subjects do they have a day?
Good question. So in first and second year, where you've got your broader general education, I want to say 14 subjects. In our school, one of them, they choose the hearing impaired department, so they choose to come to the unit.
Right.
So they come to the hearing impaired department instead of learning a modern language. That's how it works in our school. I'm not sure about other schools. So in first and second year, you've got about 14 subjects. And then in your third and fourth year, which we know as standard grades, now it's called Nat 5 and Nat 4. National 5, National 4. That's what they're called now. I think it's 8. But again, our deaf students, they choose 7. And if they want, it's a choice. If they want, one of the subjects is the hearing impaired department, so that they're getting that extra support and they're getting time in the unit or in our department to concentrate on other subjects and almost consolidate and go over what they've been learning.
Because when I was at school, like for example, in the morning I had math, then I had biology, and then I had drama, then I had PE, then I had too many more. Do the teacher every day go to every class?
No.
But then they're not getting 100%.
I know.
Because I remember when I was at high school, when I went to one class that I didn't have teacher every day, I was very anxious. I knew I wasn't going to get all the information. I was watching other people, what they were doing. I was scared to put my hand up and make a fool of myself. I was, for the whole, I never forget that, the whole hour. I was looking at the time going, hurry up. I loved that. The whole show.
Yep.
It was awful. I mean, I used to get up in the morning and thinking, I can't wait to leave school. That was like second year. I've got a long way to go. And then when the teacher do come into the class, and you're like, you concentrate and you doing your work. But you start to feel different from your friends at that point.
Yep.
Doing can't run. I'm liking, I got involved with my friends in class, even though I was anxious. But when I do have a teacher today, I feel they all didn't know me because it's busy with a teacher there. And I'm thinking, it's giving me my...
Yep, I get it. And we see that now with, as a teacher of the deaf, you don't want to single the student out and you don't want them to feel so different. But at the same time, it's funny because some of them are like, oh, here she comes, like, oh, teacher of the deaf, like, oh.
Oh,
like,
that's my time, I was desperate for a teacher of the deaf to come in.
I think they are. So you saying that is very interesting because that's what they show us. So they're like, oh, I can't believe you're here. Oh. But I think there's that relief for some of them. Some of them are vocal about it. So some of them will say like, oh, I'm so glad you're here and I need you for this bit, or I need you to help me. But most of the time, it is a fine balance. It is a very delicate juggle for us because we do support in class. So the subject teacher's at the front, going over the activities, going over what they have to do, and we're sitting beside the deaf student and either, so I use a whiteboard quite a lot, so I'll write down tasks or things that have been said. We use technology quite a lot now, so we've got amazing. So we've got a team.
That's what I was going to ask. I would love to know.
We'll come on to that later, but we've got technology that helps us where we can quickly add photos or things onto their team or onto a notebook online.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. But
okay. And so we have that to support the pupil and do as much as we can when we're with them, because we know those periods where they have no one,
right,
there will be those feelings for some of them. Some of them cope okay. Some of our deaf students will tell us, they'll say, I'm fine in that class, like I don't need you. And you're like, are you saying that? Do you really need me? But it can feel awkward's not the right word. I think it's awkward for the teenager. But you want them to feel included in the class and you want them to be with their friends and getting that secondary school, high school experience. So that's why we're in class with them. Then you've got an adult sitting with you. I mean, that's not cool.
So how can you choose what class you need to be in with them?
It comes down to the way the timetable works is we'll look at obviously all the students we have, starting really from the top with our 5th and 6th years who have got exams, who have got a real need before they leave school. Then coming down to 3rd and 4th year of, again, exams, National 5s, National 4s, who needs that extra support or who needs support at all. And then your 1st and 2nd years, you're supporting those kids who have just arrived, who are just... That transition from primary to secondary is, it's huge for some of them. It's terrifying. So it's spreading us as evenly and as fairly amongst the pupils as we can, and making sure that maths and English is covered. Your social subjects, where you've got your geography, your history, your religious, moral, modern studies, they're covered. Science as well, ones where the vocabulary is so new, even just the techniques and the processes, the way that they answer questions and the things that they're looking for, that's so new to them that we need to make sure that those subjects are covered. Where we sometimes don't give them support would be in things like art, drama, PE, things where we not assume, that's the wrong word, where we know, because it's more practical, or they'll be more hands-on, there's a lot less for a teacher of the deaf really to help with, because given that there's deaf awareness training for all our teachers, and all our teachers are aware of what to put in place for those students, there's instructions, or there should be instructions on the board. There should be written, typed instructions given to the pupil so that they know what's needed. Visual things as well to help them. So there are certain subjects where we take a step back, right, because we assume that they should cope more without us. The greater need is in your maths and English, that your basics are getting covered and getting covered well. That's, I think, I'm speaking from my experience. I'm putting that out there.
And do you know what?
Because there will be other schools and other teachers of the deaf who go, that's not how we do it, or it works differently in our school. So that's my experience.
Yeah. You know what? I don't think I had changed from when I was a teacher. I think it's very much the same.
Okay.
But there's one thing I would like to add.
Yes.
It's the passion. Why you know, like for example, I've done a lot of research on apps and stuff like that, and I'm actually researching every day because I go to events. I've been going to so many things, and don't even go with booking and interpreting and stuff like that. It's been that hard.
Yeah.
But I think I was just thinking, there are apps and stuff like that. Like what that app I found. I'm looking more into it. They had a phone or an iPad. I don't know if it worked with an iPad. And so that link, like a microphone, Bluetooth microphone, a cap.
Yep.
And I can be plugged into something the other way, but I'm not very technical. I'm not good to brain, but I found something. So when you teach to speak through the microphone, what they did will come up with an iPad.
Okay, yeah.
Imagine them having an iPad, and whenever the teacher speaking, everything comes up.
Okay, like live captioning.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they tech.
Yeah.
So if you listen to the teacher, you can start when you want with your friend. You know, I haven't to go come to the front. You know what I mean? I need to go up the front and I'm thinking, I want to be with my friend, you know what I mean? But they have independent and so with a technology. Like them, like different, there are different types of stuff. You know, there are people who hard of hearing, there are people who mild, moderate, severe and profound. So some can cope than others. But I'm profoundly deaf. And I rely so much on support from someone. So, if I had that, it would be amazing. It's time for new technology.
Yeah, I think two things with that. First one, the obvious one that jumped into my head is budget and money. So the cost.
What have they planned their own?
Yeah. Again, it's the...
Those dollars don't shut up.
No.
But I just find everything to do with money.
Yep.
It's hard for deaf people to hear.
Yeah.
Because they're not interested in it. Because I'll be honest, I've got... I just had my cochlear implant 3 years ago. We could only get one. and they want to focus more on children, what I 100% agree, so they can have two.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that would be for teenagers. I haven't asked that yet, but it's different rules for different people, different. I just feel when it takes funding or we do something, it really, honestly, inside, we are like crying. We're like, it's always going to be a barrier. It's always going to be something that making life harder.
Yeah, I think so. The first thing was funding and again, this isn't from us. This is way above us. So this is government stuff. This is choosing at local authority level where, as you say, the money goes. Who gets that funding and why? Second thing I would say about the technology is wonderful when it works, and we've all watched YouTube clips when it's automated. So I'm thinking that app is like automated live captioning. So would you rather be getting maybe 50% of the information and 50% is wrong? Or would you rather rely on support when you get it in person? No, that's a hypothetical question. That's like
there's another thing.
Yeah.
There is I can't do that. That's what would be here. Banana typist. No.
The typist.
Right. That when something working in the office.
Yep.
That I've been to an event. It was quite good actually. I had a screen. Mm-hmm. If you teach any child that get a subject, they would have different pupils and different. They can go. Well, the problem is there's too many deaf people, but
there's not too many deaf people. It's just there's a lot of deaf people.
No, I mean there's not enough deaf to support all deaf people. So we can't. But I'm telling you, there's more awareness, so there could be more people coming in.
Yeah.
So for example, the planner typing, the teacher speaking through the microphone, that is a human typing, not like typing in. And it's like a TV, and it comes up.
Yeah, there you have the accuracy then, and again, as much as it pains me, it's funding and it's staffing, it's who is qualified to do that job, who is at an accurate level of typing, and that, I mean, that's a hard job to listen to someone speaking live and type everything they say. So again,
but they've got a special tool, a type dot cuts and stuff.
Yeah, okay.
They don't actually type. They've got the. I'm amazed by what they do, honestly.
So again, that's something where schools need to be looking forward, and I think looking at what is available to us, sort of time as well. So the time runs away from you in school. Most teachers will agree that it's time to research that. And again, you're sitting at home going, what else can I find that take that to the school, ask them, I suppose, take it to your counsellor, your local MSP, actually saying, where is the funding going? What funding is there for deaf pupils? Is this an option? So again, it's going higher up than the school and asking for it, but it's the fact that you even have to do that you have to fight for ways to make it accessible.
Because I think it's something that's been hidden. Like, all deaf people just go on with it. So I'm going to, there's a wee story there, I'm going to, let's see where it is, because it's quite emotional for me, so I'm going to be honest. Right. I'm going to ask that question first. Do I have guidance teachers or that finished?
No. So now the way our school works is, so they're now called pupil support teachers. So pupil support teachers are your guidance teacher, but now nearly every teacher in the school is a pupil support teacher. So I have, let me get this right, I have about 15 pupils on my caseload. So every teacher, if they work 4 days or more, I think it works out, has a pupil support remit. So nearly everyone's a guidance teacher to somebody. So there are still pupil support teachers. In fact, there's more. Because it used to only be like 2 for each house group, wasn't it? Or 3 for each house group. And they were one of them was your guidance teacher. But now nearly every teacher in the school is a pupil support teacher, and we all have less of a caseload.
And did that help them?
I would say so. I think...
What were the deaf pupils? Did that help them?
I think so, because I think you have less... As a teacher, from our point of view, from a pupil support perspective, you really know your pupil support kids. You know who they are. You can meet up with them when necessary. You've got that interaction with the parents, rather than not even knowing who your guidance teacher was when we were younger. You were like, who's going to help me? So now I think that definitely helps every pupil, not just the deaf pupils.
Yeah, good, because when I was in school, I hate my feeling. I always hate my feeling. When I wake up one morning, like on a Monday, I thought, here we go again. So I don't tell anybody how I'm feeling. I just put my uniform, get my bag, go to school. And then, you know, the hardest thing for me, just like what we spoke earlier about deaf identity, I didn't know who I was. Because I have different people, friends, I felt who I had about me. I couldn't choose. Because I didn't know. That is what I thought about going with my hearing friend. When I get all the information, I feel more lonely. Or would I go with my deaf friend who are deeming me, but I feel, in my opinion, limited. Yeah. So after done it, I'm going to go both ways. Yeah. But I felt whoever I went to, I was losing friends because I wasn't 100% with them. I was 50-50. And every time I go into a classroom, I just felt like worrying about who my friends are, worrying about understanding everything, worrying about... I was that person that loved to learn, and I would full on my work. And some people would like, why are you doing this, why are you doing this? I just know I want to learn. But you know why? I was determined to leave do it early. Okay. Because I didn't want to be there till this year. I wanted to leave, didn't I got my qualification.
Get out.
I just wanted to get out of it. It's a lovely do, great, but mentally I just felt I wasn't getting everything 100%. Yeah. And I felt I was so scared to teach it. Okay. Because I was scared that if I did something wrong, they would think I wasn't listening, or in my head, I had to be right, I had to be perfect for them. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why I thought that. It just, I just didn't want to sound stupid.
Yeah, I get that.
We all have thoughts going on from doing we go on to school, coming home from school, going to bed, get out of bed. We have those thoughts in our heads, and I've had that for first to fifth year. But then when I got to fifth year, I thought it's time. For the 5, I'm going to be honest here, for the 5 years, I don't know who my friends are. I don't have any friends from school. Nobody. Okay. And I look back and then I wish I kept in contact with the hearing community. But I went with the deaf community. But then everybody went separate way. So literally, I've got one best friend from when I was little. She's amazing. But sometimes we'll same with everybody else. We go through a journey. I go to college, definitely, we do, and then come back again. You know, she's a friend that are always there.
Yeah.
Even though we lose in touch, she's still my friend.
Yeah.
So I'm so thankful for her. But apart from her, I don't have friends and stuff. Because...
And I don't know, Cheryl, if that is necessarily a deaf thing. I'm going to say that
Really?
for lots of people, that's a massive... I was speaking... Funny you bring that up. Speaking to one of our students the other day about the fact that you are friends with people in school because you have to be. You have no other option to be friends with these people that you're with 5 days a week. You have to be friends with someone. You have to hang about with someone. And I think teenagers, it's very binary. As you say, it's very them or that group. It's almost you have to make a choice. For some people, it's like, do you go with the popular kids or people that think they're popular? Do you go with the kind of studious crowd that want, like as you say, to study? I think for lots of teenagers, that time, and I know I felt it as well, just listening to you speak, I'm like, I had all those feelings. I had the same thoughts. But for the deaf pupils, it's magnified. You're between two worlds. You have the hearing world on one side and you have the deaf world, deaf community on the other side. And it's how do we make them meet? And for teenagers, they don't meet, they don't marry up. And we have students just now that if they listen to this, the students that I have just now, it's very obvious that I'm with my hearing friends. I take nothing to do with the deaf community. And others who have that safety in the deaf community in school and the hearing impaired department as we are. There's almost a comfort of knowing I've got somebody that understands. So I created a lunch club on a Tuesday where all the deaf kids are invited to have lunch together if they want, to give them a safe space and a space just to come along and be like, oh, I can be myself and you all get it and we can have a chat. And we've been watching Strictly Come Dancing. It's educational, I promise. Where we watch Rose on the telly because then we're watching a deaf role model and we're chatting about it. But there are still, and I get it, there are still some deaf young people who are like, no, I'm not coming to that. No, that's not for me. No. And I'm like, cool, that's who you are. And I just worry, as you're saying, that when they leave school or they then think, oh, I should have.
What if they watched someone that went through school and thought, I'll go there to get a deaf bay?
Yeah.
What if, because Rose, I think she's in the final, and when that's over, what are they going to, who else is going to be inspired them?
Who do they watch then, yeah?
So I think it's time gather all this together from when I was at school. I think what we've done there is absolutely spot on. Create a deaf bay.
Yeah.
I think it's time to do more of that. And I think it's time to bring in inspirational deaf people, videos, or even in person. Bring more of that out in school.
You're number one on my list.
From them.
Yeah.
That's what they need.
I think they need to see, we've spoken about, they need to see life beyond school. They need to see that you're deaf for life. So in school you get that support from a teacher of the deaf. You've got that support from an audiologist or from, say, the hospital when you get your hearing checks and things. When you're an adult, as you've found, there isn't as much support. There isn't. It's harder to find interpreters. It's harder to find accessible ways to lead a normal life. And I'm saying normal there because what's normal? But I think sometimes our students, the fear for me, I'm trying to say that the Tuesday lunch club is great and it's one lunch a week, so it's 1 out of 5. But my fear was, am I creating that safe space where they're so safe that they then don't branch out? Like you're saying, then they're not going with their hearing friends. Like, oh, it's so hard. It's so hard
but
to manage.
But it doesn't have to be deaf people. It can be anybody that wants to get involved.
Yeah.
What if it's time to do? I want to learn more about deaf people. Why can they not come to?
Yeah.
Why can I have a hole?
So, funny you should say that.
And if they want a deaf person, they'll probably feel, oh, I need to teach her, I would need to be more kind to her, or I would need to change her I'm more.
So it started as a kindness club. So I started it as a kindness club. We called it the Kindness Collective, where anyone could come, and it really was to target some pupils, especially in first year, who they just didn't know where to go at lunchtimes. Lunchtimes are scary. It's a big place.
I hated lunchtime.
Me too. So it's a big place. You don't really know where to go. There's big ones who seem like grown-ups. They're like adults. You're tiny. You're missing primary school. It's horrible. So I started the Kindness Club for everybody. And what I found, I think it was maybe because I was running it, it was all the deaf pupils coming. And then we weren't really getting a chance to really speak about deaf issues. So it flipped. Instead of having anyone coming along, I then made it, we'll just have the deaf pupils. But now you're saying that, maybe it should be bring your hearing friends along and say, drop in and do some deaf awareness and make it a place for all, because, yeah, it's now become, it's this cliquey deaf club, which is lovely and I love it, and it is a safe space for them all.
Because you might get people that who are hearing feel lonely.
Yeah.
They might want to come.
Yeah.
And they probably be more comfortable being in that environment.
Yeah.
We don't want hearing people to feel alone. I never want to, I always, when I go to events and stuff, if something's quiet, I think I'm there. But I want that person to be involved.
Included, yeah.
So if they have that in school, but other, there might be children who are getting bullied.
Yeah.
They want to come with that. And they start to understand in the deaf community, because sometimes they get bullied. Yeah. So it could be a safe place for all the children. And the more of that, I would imagine, I would think when I was up there, I would have to have this banky beanbag.
Yeah.
And a big chair,
Yeah.
and you can walk, express to people, or, you know, just, do they do that? Do the deaf children do that, or that because of the COVID?
No, so we've got one coming up. So in December, we're doing the HID day out, so the Hearing Impaired Department day out, and we are taking them to Braehead. So they've chosen the activities they want to do, so trampolining, mini golf, bowling, what else was there? Laser tag. And then we all have a lunch together, and then we all come back to school. So that's like our Christmas day out, and hopefully through the year, we can have other days out. Come and visit the podcast studio. Like,
I was more thinking about colleges and stuff. Do they do visit?
So some of our pupils have like a day at college. So they have like a link course. So they do...
The deaf people?
Mm-hmm. Some of them, yeah. So one of our 6th years is at college on a Thursday. So again, getting that support of a kind of taster, like trying college.
I didn't have that at my time.
So yeah, so some things have changed.
So... That's good. And did that person get the pool?
Yeah. Yep.
So that, the person stayed to be alive, is it wrong to get into the pool? I didn't. I just went left though, went to college. I did everything on my own. I had the pool at college, but my mindset was much better. Do you know why? When you go to college, everybody's got this different personality, this different... You know, when I was at graphic design, there was a girl, she was much older than us, and I think she felt like she was top of the mum of the group.
Yeah.
So I went to her because she felt like that, and I felt I was there, so we connected. And then she would support me, and I was, you know, sometimes I would connect with someone at college. because nobody cares.
I think it's as well in school you're trying to fit in, and when you leave school there's that sort of, you find out really who you are. So there's always that phrase like find your vibe, and then you find your tribe. So you find your people. So you then find, rather than having friends because of locality and because of being stuck with them in a year group, you then find people who you have something genuinely in common with, that you have a shared interest, or you have that compassion for each other. I think there's an empathy there then when you find other people in college or uni going through what you're going through. That comes with maturity. I think that you don't see that really in secondary schools, because teenagers are still at that stage of finding who they are. Not a lot of them know their own self yet to then find other people.
But how do you help with the mental health? How do you make sure, like, I can never do that because I'm there. Nah, I'm not good enough. Or how can I do that if I'm there? Do you ever spoken about that? Mm-hmm. That they can do what they want to be? 100%. So how do you support them making sure?
So
I don't know how that do.
Okay.
I don't want to be criticizing anyone. I've been honest as possible because I want things to change. If things are changing now, I want things to change even better in a 5 year time, 10 years time. The more we talk about it, because some other students might find that interesting.
Yeah.
It might help other students with deaf pupils.
I think in supporting them
one thing, like, parents are probably worrying at home with my child, okay?
Yes.
So how do you prepare for all that?
So the mental health aspect, so we have an open door policy of the young people, especially in our department, they know, come in whenever. The door is open, you come in. If you need us, we are there. There will be a teacher of the deaf for you.
I would give it to my mum.
Okay.
Wow, that means very good.
So the other thing we have for some students, some of them have the family support where I could pick up the phone and talk to mum, and it's a quick catch up. Hello, how's she doing? Sorted. For other people, there's that sort of school's a barrier. You don't have the same connection with the parents. So I think parents definitely helps when you're dealing with mental health. I think the world is changing now with regards to mental health. It's spoken about more. The pupils, the young people are aware of it more. They'll chat about their feelings quite openly. And I think because we know our pupils in the department so well, we're always chatting. So the staff are always aware of what's going on with all of them. I would say we're quite good at that in our school now, which makes me really sad that you didn't get the same experience. But I think it was a different world back then.
I think it was.
For mental health in general, not...
It was. No, that's what I do. Social media is not... Social media is the biggest thing mental health for children.
Yeah.
We didn't have social media all the time, did we?
No.
No, we didn't. It was like Bebo or something.
Oh, weird. Yep, Bebo, MySpace. That was when I was at uni, so that is like early 2000s. So you're talking 20 years, like the past 20 years.
That was nothing but Instagram and all that. Don't get me started. But no, at the meeting what they do now, I think that's what I was more concerned about, mental health support. Talk about the feeling. I'm glad that introduced it. And if there's any child out there or anybody that have a deaf child in school and you want to find out more information, contact me and I can ask Lindsay for tips and stuff, and we'll be more than happy to help.
And that's where there's things online as well, like your NDCS and other charities. There are charities out there for deaf support, and part of that is mental health. Part of that as well is supporting the parents, because kids will always feed off your emotions. Kids know how the parents feel, and if the parent is anxious about how are you going to be at school and how are you going to cope, and you're going to struggle because you're deaf, the kids are going to feel that. So, and a lot of how your story, the family support is massive.
I need to be careful here because my son is there. I don't want him picking up my worry because I'm already thinking my beating, I'm worried about him. But things are changing. He hears what it calls so well, he doesn't even react to me directly. So I know he'll be okay, but it's because I've got a hearing daughter and a deaf son. I'm not comparing, I'm just thinking, oh, it's going to be okay to be fine. What about him? What about the lack of support and stuff like that? I go through what hearing parents go through. Yeah. And you're all thinking, but she's deaf. No, I go through what other mums go through. Doesn't matter if you're deaf or hearing. You just want the best for your child. That's why I'm making sure there's a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. Let's talk about more about that. So people can listen from a deaf experience or from a teacher with a deaf experience. Or lots of different experience. The more we talk about that, the more
just raising awareness, I suppose. It's an awareness, isn't it?
Something that we can
awareness.
Talk about more.
Yeah.
Because I feel when it's something been talked about, when it gets forgotten. I think it's time starting from today when we're talking about that, there's more people talking about different things.
And that's where you are like a beacon of light in the deaf community now, because this podcast and everything that you're doing to raise awareness and just giving deaf young people or other deaf people a role model or somebody. So I follow a couple of people online and they speak about PIPs. So proof it's possible. So you're a PIP. You're proof it's possible.
I never heard of that. Oh.
So to show someone that there's someone doing it. So for any young deaf person who's been told, oh, you can't, or you won't speak, or you can't do that job, or you can't do it because you're deaf, you're a PIP. You're proof it's possible.
Oh, thank you. No, I just want to, I went through a lot of anxiety, a lot of, I think, sorry, the long pause, to just try and get the right word.
No,
I think, I just don't want anybody to go through what I went through. That I'm making sure everything is in place for the support for the children, because it's a horrible feeling. You know yourself going to school, for deaf people feel more isolated, they feel more. I just want to make sure everything is accessible for them. Everything, like, I couldn't ask for help. I was scared.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what we're doing is fantastic. I wish I had that too. But anyway, I'm here. I'm doing my podcast. Getting my experience to move forward and help other children. I've not really heard any other podcast.
Nope.
So I want more people to talk about it on podcast. The more people talk about, if you have someone in business, if you got a deaf person working for you, could you please get that person to talk about what they're going through and let the school know, or the other person, because the more there are a lot of deaf people working, but they're not doing to the other deaf people to make them.
Yep.
I was working in counter for 13 years. Nobody knows the other deaf graphic designer because it's not been spoken about. You know what I mean? So if I was an employer, they would think, oh, let's promote her in our businesses. And so we are accessible, we're making sure if we store that out there, and the more we have, the young deaf children can see it.
And I think it's instilling confidence in the deaf young people or the deaf individual, that if you are in a workplace, it is putting yourself out there, isn't it? It's having the confidence to say, here's my obstacles, how could we overcome them? And also, here's what I bring to the business. So whether I'm deaf or not, here's what I kind of add to this workforce. So it's having that self-worth and self-confidence, I think, and that's what we have to instill in the deaf young people in school at the moment, is to say you can do anything, and almost helping them to own being deaf, to say, I'm deaf, could you repeat that? I'm deaf, could you face me? Having the confidence to put that deaf awareness, and it's not like it has to be a 9 to 3, 9 to 5 course of we are teaching deaf awareness. It maybe just has to be a deaf person in the room having that confidence, which is so hard, but putting their hand up to say, sorry, I'm deaf, could you take your mask down? Could you face me, or could you turn the other way so that I can lip read? Having those little nuggets of information will probably be better deaf awareness than giving someone a course and they forget it.
Because not a lot of deaf people have confidence to do that.
And that's the catch-22 of instilling confidence in deaf young people while they're at school, and showing them that they're capable and that they can, and giving them a voice, or I say voice because it could be through sign, and allowing them the skills, or giving them the skills, so that they can spread deaf awareness, because it almost has to come. That's, again, we've come full circle, because going back to the beginning of why are more deaf people not in those professional roles, they don't have the confidence. They don't step up to then say, I could do that. So, and that's a systemic issue. It's not from them personally. It's the way they've been treated at school. It's the way they've almost, as you say, been hidden. So confidence and self-worth, I think, is massive. I keep saying massive. Confidence and self-worth is a really big deal in order for them to know they can do anything, to go and be anything, and to actually then take on those roles so that they are a deaf role model for someone else.
Do you not get career advisors and anything coming in?
Yeah, so we've got a career advisor 3
Do
days a
they
week.
talk about deaf people? Do they?
So one of our deaf students got a text message say, your career appointment is on Tuesday at 2:00. Come and see the career. So she was like, oh my God, like, if I had to leave school. So she was freaking out, because she was like, oh no, like, is this them telling me that I've got to leave and I've got to go and get a career? So I was like, no, this is your chance to ask questions. Because she was thinking more, I'm going to be interviewed. And I was like, no. This is you interviewing the career advisor to say, what can I do? What is available? And what could I flourish in? Because
are the career advisor deaf people?
I think so. They're part of the staff training. So I think they've had the same training as the teachers.
Because I had a career advisor. I don't think she was deaf people. I'm not going to have to think that. I think she was just putting us both.
Oh, okay.
So I think she was like, not deaf people.
Quite a limited view of what you could do. Okay, that's interesting.
I wasn't able to.
Now you're saying that, I'm thinking in my head, has she had the deaf training? So that's something I'm going to look into now, because I'm like, I wonder if
because
the career advisor
because I feel when you talk to a deaf person about it, though, it has to be dealt differently.
Okay.
Because if you deaf to them, what do you want to be? Right? If somebody asked a doctor, what would that person do to that person? And I hear him point of view, like, have they ever think in their head and think, oh, they can't be a doctor because she's deaf? Do they? I don't know. They might not be.
I know, because from my...
How do they be careful?
Yeah, I think there's certainly... I can only think of a couple of jobs, police being one, where you go through a medical. I think fire service might be another one. Again, someone might correct me on this. There are certain professions that because you go through a medical beforehand, and hearing being
And a
pilot, hearing being a key element of the communication aspect of listening to radio, listening to environmental sound. There's a lot of aspects where at the moment I don't think you can.
What worried me out, how do you deal with that confidence? Well, I can't be a fireman.
Yeah.
How do you have to put a baby with it there to do you can't? Because my son is starting, I want to be a priest, I want to do that. I've got my heart to tell him, no you can't. Because I'm hoping he don't need things might change in 10 years.
Yeah, I was just about to say
20 years.
There's also that element of I'm literally in my head thinking, why can't they do that job? Like, what else could be put in place that, again, as you're saying, in the future, the nature of that job might change, that yes, you can do that job. Like, it used to be a height thing. Remember, you had to be like 5'6" or something to be in the police, and 5'7", and now that's all changed. So I think times are changing, and there's I would like to think there's more equity and equality in career choices now. But they're the ones that popped into my head when I'm like, they are the roles that we would probably have to say to a deaf person. And it is hard. It is hard if they were to say, I want to go into the police, to tell them, I don't think you can. But those are the only ones that really right now are popping into my head. There is a whole other array, a ginormous amount of jobs out there, career paths that deaf individuals would be brilliant at.
Because, I give you an example, even if they priest, there are a lot of rules they can do.
Yeah.
Like, you how to get crime, read the computer, you look out to the media, they can do that.
Yeah.
So, even if I think it's time to add in titles of the war.
Okay.
So if you can't be a priest, a lot of people think priest means walking out in the street, arresting someone. It doesn't necessarily mean that.
Yeah,
it could be anything.
They can't really be a police constable at the moment, I don't think. However, you are right, they could work for Police Scotland. They could have another role within that umbrella of police. Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's so many things changing.
Mm-hmm. And again, that was there's me showing my very ignorant, narrow view. That when you say, like when I said police, I was thinking, yep, a police constable walking the beat. However, you're right, it then would be saying to that young person, well, have you thought of other areas within the police? Yeah.
Do they not reject this? They know they can do something.
Yeah. I think, though, it's difficult if that young person has put their heart or has their heart set on a specific job, and there's only a couple where you go, yeah,
but
that's...
you don't want to say no.
Yeah.
It's better to do something here than say no.
Here's other options. Here's something similar. Absolutely.
And also, I know that I think there's a deaf person to paramedic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how, but they had a doctor who's deaf.
Yeah.
So they asked them.
Oh, I think, as you said earlier, people wouldn't even realise that some people are deaf. Especially, it's harder sometimes with a deaf woman because of the longer hair. So it hides the aids, it hides the cochlear implant. So sometimes you wouldn't know that there's an additional need there, or that deafness, like, it's hidden. So there probably are lots of deaf people in lots of roles. You just don't know it.
When they do work experience, do they go the work experience they want to do, or does it go anything? Because I remember my time, you should have to pick. Do you don't do that?
Yeah, not recently because of COVID. That's a good question. So I've been in that school now 3 years. So there was only 1 year that would have been COVID free. And yeah, I think it was, they choose it's almost up to the pupil to kind of organise a work experience, or something is found for them. And I know that of one young person who worked locally, and it was like a joinery company, and he wanted to be an apprentice joiner, so he went and did that. So yeah, it's pretty much up to whatever they want to choose, they go and do.
Would they rather do that, or do you think it would go belonging to for them to go work experience and someone who is there in their employment?
I mean, that would be amazing.
But they are enjoying it to an accountant out there. That they went with them rather than person, because they can see what technology to do. So they can see that from work experience rather than going out work experience and have nothing.
That's brilliant, yeah.
The demographic designer at the accountant, something want to do something, and she's there. They contacted me, I would be willing to work with her, because I think I would give her 100%.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
And this is what I need to do before my client. That is what I do. Emails, or that is my radio. So when I go back to school, they have all that in their head for the future.
It's amazing now that you're saying that. I'm like, that absolutely has to be a thing. So when work experience comes back round, I am going to put that out there of how many deaf professionals can we find, and ask. And again, it would obviously be up to the individual, and also depending on what the student's career choice was. But for example, we found there's a deaf toddler group locally. So we're Daisy Park Centre.
Yep.
Edit that out.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. They do BSL level 1.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to learn BSL, contact them. I can't remember the name, but I'll link them below. So, yeah, because I had too many people asking me.
Yeah,
so they do level 1, but if you want to try it out and see how it goes, I'll add the link.
So, yeah, Daisy Park Centre. Okay, so one of our young girls was looking at working with children, so we had asked if she could go up and help with the toddler group, the deaf toddler group, so that she was seeing deaf adults, deaf grown-ups running a group, how they communicated, just what was involved from a deaf perspective that we wouldn't be able to give her, that it's local, it was work experience, and there were deaf adults there. So we thought that would be brilliant. So we're looking into that. I think that's been approved. But for work experience, I absolutely think that's a genius idea of finding a deaf person in employment and shadowing, almost like working with them. And it almost doesn't really matter what. Obviously, it does matter what the job is to a certain extent, but just to see a deaf grown-up
and how they communicate with the hearing people.
Yeah.
It won't be a deaf company, it will be a deaf person who's working in a hearing company. So they can watch how we communicate with them, and they can watch your eye.
Yeah.
I think it's time to do everything with your eye.
Yeah. And give them those skills. Give them those skills for life after school. Absolutely.
I think that's important stage of their life to think.
Yeah.
Life after school. I think that's important. I think so.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest with you, I love primary school, great memories. High school, blocked out my mind. Gone. College, it was good, but it was hard work, but I got there. I had something ready for me leaving school, going into further education. Like for example, life experience. Do you know other deaf people what they do? I feel we have a better mindset moving forward to further education, because they can say, well, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. Because I don't want them, I'll be honest with you, when they leave school, I don't know if a lot of people have gone college at uni, they would rather get a job because they're scared. So if I show more of life experience, like when I do my job and stuff like that, I feel it might change how we see the future.
Yeah.
And one more thing, the group audio, to remember my mind went blank. For det karrierearbejde.
You got it written down?
No, I'm not got it right now, but it came in my head. I'm hoping to cut that crap out.
Role model, working with someone who's deaf, shadowing them.
I remember now, apprenticeship.
Okay.
Did you talk about apprenticeship and stuff?
Yes, but again, they are few and far between. So there aren't that many. There aren't many apprenticeships these days. And again,
I don't want to name a country, but then I don't know any country. I'm pretty sure they have apprenticeship.
Yeah.
They can go not eat the button. At the call it. At the room they put on, and they can work with different apprenticeship.
Right. Okay. I know that apprenticeships exist. How many there are, I don't have a figure, I don't have a statistic. However, there seems to be a lot less in the kind of in the past few years. There seems to be a lot less apprenticeships as a route to work. The sort of standard route seems to be college or uni, and that's how you then go and find your own job, rather than the apprenticeship and working on the job.
That's another habit. Look, when you qualified and you're looking for a job, that's another day. I was so lucky that I got my job after college. Because I just went and did it. And do you know why I got that job? They asked me that question. If you were in a meeting and you didn't know what was going on, what would you do? In my head, why did they ask me that question? But I thought, you know what, I'll be honest, I just did. I would put my hand up and say, stop. Can you someone speak one at a time? Or stop. And they did that with them at Preston because I was confident.
It showed confidence,
I got that job. So, if I hadn't did that, well, I've gotten a job. Not to want to think that, but what I'm trying to say, there might not be some people that have the confidence. No. So, it's time we talk more about that. And I think so, because I want to help people get a job. I don't want them to leave do and working in something because they feel they can't do it.
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen. So I think at time, maybe I don't know if you heard Jim Fry.
Yeah.
I don't know if they come out just do.
Yeah.
Talk about, because they talk about skills and barriers and stuff like that. The more information, details to all, I think it would be amazing for deaf children. So I'm going to take and see if there's anything else you want to do.
I don't think so. I think just having someone like you locally as a role model for our students, I already know. I'm already thinking of, I've asked you in to come to our Deaf Lunch Club. I would love you to speak to the pupils. I already have a pupil in mind who I know would love all of this as a future career path. So I think what you are doing is wonderful, and just keep doing it.
Do you know what? To give me an idea, I would love to try and find a workshop. Like do a podcast workshop.
Yeah.
Just bring companies and do a workshop.
My friend does podcast workshops.
Does she?
Yes, she's local.
Do anything like that.
Connections.
Do anything like that. Just to give me a bit of confidence. Maybe before I don't want the people thinking, but I can't be. There are other ways. They can down to the camera.
Yeah.
There's a couple of YouTubers that down.
Yeah.
Like a captain. So if you're down, captain. If you speak, captain. The captain will support you. So that's important.
Captions are so important, and subtitles are key. We find that in our work. So there's mixed captions, the app. Subly is another one, which is good. Some of these you do have to pay for, but and as you know, it's time consuming. It's hard work typing in all the captions, but
well, I found a solution for that. I knew, well, it's been a long one. I in no way can type it out. I know a company called rev.com.
Okay.
So after that, when Greg, the podcast, made a wee video, got it all ready for me, I upload to them. And it because the human typer, they'll type it all for me, and they'll think the file, and I can check it all. It will only take me about an hour.
Perfect.
If I didn't have that, I'd probably be here for a month.
I know, but one of the students, one of my
Oh.
students does YouTube videos, and she's like, "Oh, miss, I spent so long typing out captions," and it's hard work, but things like obviously when you're paying for it or getting someone else to do it for you, then genius, it's needed.
Because for example, if you have a video and I don't have caption, go to that company. They would do it for you, and you can upload that video with caption. So I'm going to be working on a lot of them on my website. There will be a lot of videos, a lot of them. I'm going to put all that on, and if you want to visit my website, then I'll make sure there are videos for you to learn. So I think that's everything. It's a bit long one, I think that.
We had a lot to say, Cheryl.
What?
We had a lot to say.
Yeah, I think reading awareness.
Yeah.
I just think I'm hoping if I started this through, there's more people out there talking about it.
Yeah.
Because like I say, mental health, making sure they're not isolated, be included as you can, get them involved, workshop, work experience, I think it would change them mentally how to move forward to the future.
I agree.
Having nothing worried me what they think the future. I can't do it. I mean, road from 30 has started.
Yes.
See the buying to the net just from eat dangers to eat dangers.
Yeah.
I've never walked any store that had a dead person, and she, the first person to do that inspiration, isn't it?
Yes.
And yeah, so we see more dead people and their career,
Yeah.
the more people do it. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Thank you. I'm excited to see what you're going to do next.
So no, yeah, I think that everything's covered.
Yeah.
And do you want to say bye?
Yes, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
And thank you for coming, but taking your time. Thank you. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed listening to that. And again, if you would like to find more information or ask me anything, contact me. We'll be more than happy to help you. And yeah, bye.